Now, welcome to another lightning response video. This time we again have a few questions, and let's right away kick it off with this one from Siberian Dream, who asked, Hey Thor, do you think Star Wars would be a success if Dave Filoni was put in charge of it? As you've pointed out before, it's unlikely he'll be put in charge, so I'm just asking hypothetically. I know a lot of people think things would improve if he was the one calling the shots, but let's not forget he holds views that are very unpopular with fans, like ignoring continuity and rewriting canon to suit his whims. And as the creator of the Ahsoka project, he was the one who sidelined Timothy Zahn when writing for Thrawn, purely because he wanted to do his own thing with someone else's creation. He does have some credits to his name, like what he does in the animated sphere, but then the consensus seems to be that he blew it with the Ahsoka series. Do you think he's still qualified to hold absolute authority over Star Wars, or have your opinions changed on that? I'm just skeptical that someone so selfish can fill George Lucas's shoes when, as you've said before, the lesson of Star Wars is promoting selflessness, and Dave Filoni is about as selfish as you can get. And I want to start this off by saying that I don't hate Dave Filoni or anything. I think he's a big Star Wars fan. He's a passionate Star Wars fan. I think he loves the franchise. I think he cares. I'm sure he enjoys what he gets to do for a living, that he is kind of the creative head of Star Wars or Lucasfilm right now. Though he is not the guy in charge, that is still Kathleen Kennedy. And if you ask me which one would I prefer at the top, Kennedy or Filoni, I would say Filoni. I think Filoni would do a better job. Now, would he do a great job as president of Lucasfilm? And I'm more talking on the creative side of things. Yes, there is more to being the president of Lucasfilm than just coming up with ideas and talking Star Wars and doing that. There's a lot of other stuff that goes along with it. Anyway, I was not a huge fan of the Ahsoka series, and as I have said before, I kind of saw those as his Jedi trials, his chance to graduate from Padawan to the Master, and I think he failed. I don't think that series was written particularly well. I don't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen. There are some good things that I liked about it, but I just don't think that was quality writing, shall we say. I think it could have been much, much better. And when we hear things like what Timothy Zahn said recently when asked, and I'm going to just play the clip for you, and I talked about this on my other channel, so I'm not going to talk about it much here. But this is what Timothy Zahn recently said when asked about whether he's been asked to help out or be a part of the Ahsoka series, where, of course, Grand Admiral Thrawn is featured, a character he created.
Sadly, not involved at all. They have occasionally told me something they're going to do a week or so ahead of airing, but I've offered assistance, and so far they haven't taken me up on it.
All right, so the first time I heard that, I did get pretty upset. I got pretty mad when I heard that. And mind you, I don't usually get mad or angry at Star Wars. Yes, I get frustrated. Yes, I make videos complaining about it, but I don't really get angry at it, if that makes sense. I mean, one of the lessons of Star Wars is to not get angry. It's to try to always keep a level head and not let your emotions rule you. But when I heard that, I did get upset, because here is the guy who created Grand Admiral Thrawn, one of the greatest characters in the history of Star Wars, in my opinion. One I've been a big fan of for over 30 years at this point. And the Ahsoka series, Dave Filoni had the opportunity to speak with and bring on board. I'm sure Zahn would have been happy coming on board and working on the actual project, not just consulting, but being a part of the script writing, and maybe even further than that, part of the actual production of it. Here, Filoni had the chance to bring him on board and decided not to even talk with him. The guy who made Thrawn what he is, to the point where you, Filoni, can now use him in a series and have him be a legitimate, credible threat because we fans know who Thrawn is because of Zahn's writing. You didn't want to bring that guy on board? I just can't and don't understand it. I can't imagine not bringing in the guy who made Thrawn famous and letting him read your script and asking for any advice or opinions you have. How can I make this better? How can I make Thrawn really stand out and shine and honor your work and make him the Thrawn every fan expects him to be? How can I do that? What do you think? Just read this and please give me some advice. And instead of doing that, we get the Thrawn we got in the Ahsoka series. And, he's not terrible, I guess, but he could have been much, much better. And if you want him to be a serious threat, if you want people who don't know who Thrawn is to take this guy seriously, you really should have brought in Zahn to help with the writing and made him that credible threat. Furthermore, Zahn has offered to write more, to write a story in between where we see Thrawn at the end of Rebels when he gets whisked away by the Purgils and Ezra goes along with them, to the point where we see him at the start of the Ahsoka series. He has offered to fill in that 10-year gap with a story with a book or even a series of books. And so far, apparently, Lucasfilm has said no. And that I just don't understand either. I don't understand why we are not allowing him, the guy who made this character, to come in and fill in the blanks and to help you create a better story, Dave Filoni. But anyway, that's kind of where I stand with Filoni. He's a better option than Kennedy. He's probably a better option than a lot of people out there. He gets Star Wars. He loves Star Wars, but he doesn't have the talent to be George Lucas, shall we say. Not that George Lucas was the greatest at everything. He could use some help in writing some scripts too. But that's basically where I stand on Dave Filoni. All right, let's move on to a few more questions, and I'm going to try to give actual lightning responses, not thunderous rambles. And the first one comes to us from Jason Reynolds, who asked, Hey Thor, if we move past everything related to the Skywalker saga, why should it be called Star Wars other than to bait and switch fans who want to love anything labeled Star Wars? When can we accept that the franchise is over? And this goes back to the age-old question I talk about all the time on this channel. Is Star Wars more of a setting where you can tell all sorts of different types of stories, or is it more a genre where you tell a certain type of story with it? And for the record, I tend to fall somewhere between the two. I think it is an amazing setting, but I think there are certain stories that certainly fit better into that setting than others, and some stories really don't belong at all in there. But again, that's my opinion. You can feel differently. And I also understand the people who think the Skywalker saga, the 6 movies, or even just the 3 first movies, or even just the first movie, Star Wars itself, only they are Star Wars and everything else is a sort of facsimile of Star Wars. However, again, in my opinion, I don't think Star Wars has to be limited to just the Skywalker saga or just the Skywalker time period. I think you could even make this weird case that the Old Republic feels and looks more like Star Wars than Star Wars does in some ways. That it really takes the war in Star Wars and puts it in there, and you have the light side and the dark side. You have the Jedi and the Sith constantly battling in huge battles, and it's this epic scale thing. And in some ways, that feels, like I said, more like Star Wars than Star Wars or the Skywalker time period. Not that there aren't big battles and epic things there. And so I certainly don't think Star Wars is just the Skywalker saga or just the Skywalker family. I think that is the heart and soul of it. That is the core of it. But there are other places Star Wars can go which can be just as good and feel just as much as Star Wars as that, at least to me. Moving right along, we now have a question from AppTac, who asked, Hey Thor, Simon Kinberg's new Star Wars trilogy is supposed to be the start of a new saga instead of the continuation of the Skywalker saga. Do you think these movies should use the same opening crawl format and the same main title and end credit theme music as the Skywalker saga movies? Or should they come up with their own? And that's a hard question because a part of me says, of course, use the same opening crawl and the same music and keep it all the same because it's a new Star Wars saga. But at the same time, it's like maybe it should be different so that the Skywalker saga is more of its own unique and easily distinguishable thing from this new story, which is a new Star Wars saga. I honestly don't know how I feel about this one, but part of me says you should just keep everything the same. It's a new chapter in the greater saga of Star Wars, so somehow make it distinguishable from the original in some small way. But I'm actually okay with the idea of calling it episode 1 of a new saga and episode 2 and so on, however many movies might get made in this new trilogy or saga. This all does go along with the previous question of is it Star Wars if it isn't the Skywalkers? And I think you just make a new saga that isn't the Skywalker saga. I'm not saying they can't be a part of it at all or mentioned or anything, but have a new saga. This is the new next chapter of Star Wars. I'm actually kind of cool and okay with that. I just don't know how much you want to distinguish the two from each other. All right, and our next one comes to us from Apocalyptico, who asked, Hey Thor, what if somehow they make animated films about the original idea for the sequels, the one George had in mind? And I would 1000% love to see something like this. I would be all for this. I just want to know what Lucas had in mind for his sequel trilogy, how it would have gone, how it would have ended, and so on. We do have little tidbits here and there, but we don't really have the full story. Now, I'm obviously not saying this would be part of the new Disney canon, but it could be, in a sense, canon to the original 6 movies and Clone Wars, since that's kind of his too. It could be the conclusion of the George Lucas Skywalker saga. We could know how his story ended. It could be a part of that. It could be the end of that. It could be the finish of his story. And I think that would just be cool to have. It would be great to know how he would have, quote unquote, ended Star Wars, how he would have ended the Skywalker saga. I would just love to know it. I don't know that Disney will ever put it out there, but I really hope they do. I hope they hire somebody to turn it into a series of books or maybe even go animated. I'm not sure they do that. but at least give us some books about how Lucas would have ended his own story of Star Wars. Okay, one more question here, and it comes to us from Paradox, who asked, "Hey Thor, what do you think about Disney maybe licensing out Star Wars or making like a reverse Sony slash Spidey MCU deal? Let someone else foot the bill, make a movie slash story, and gain some profit. Surely it's not too different from them opening up the gaming license so companies besides EA could make Star Wars games. Plus, again, the Sony deal set a precedent, in my opinion, previously unprecedented, lol." And in a way, they've already done this with Star Wars Visions, where the other studios get to do pretty much whatever they want with Star Wars, though I'm sure there are some rules and regulations they have to abide by. They can't just do anything. But they have basically done this, and I don't think it would be a terrible idea to maybe make a Star Wars anime verse, which again, they are kind of already doing. There is a new series that comes out next year, The Ninth Jedi, which was a episode of Volume 1 of Visions, and there's a new episode in Volume 3. And Volume 3 of Visions, if you didn't know, that comes out tomorrow. I will probably be covering it quite a bit over on my other channel. Anyway, I don't think it's a terrible idea. I don't think it's one that Lucasfilm is really going to let other studios do movies or anything quite like that. But I think doing something in the anime realm, and that is one of the things that I think gets the younger generation into Star Wars, because let's face it, anime is very, very popular with the younger generations and even older ones. I think that could be an interesting gateway into Star Wars to have a cool anime, and then maybe they go ahead and watch the movies and so on and so forth. So I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that. I just don't know how much a Lucasfilm would actually lean into letting, again, other studios make movies, but maybe an anime, or certainly an anime, since it's actually already happening. All right, well, I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any of these questions, or answer them, or ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you do, you start your comment off down there with "Hey Thor." You ask your question. I will try to answer it in a future video. And as I always say, I will try to. I get a lot of questions. I tend to ramble when I respond, so I don't usually answer as many as I even want to in these videos. But anyway, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.